Obviously, we've got these two documentaries, William and Queen Camilla, and another royal has been very famous for his documentaries. We had a six-part Netflix documentary, and we have with Prince Harry, and we have a polo documentary.
Which apparently he's not in very much. Well, apparently Netflix aren't very happy because there's hardly anything of the prince in it.
Yeah.
Well,
so there we are.
You've got domestic violence, you've got homelessness, and then you've got the famously underfunded sport of polo. So thank God that there's finally a spotlight.
Making documentaries has never really gone well for the royals, particularly Prince Edward when he started making lots of documentaries about his own family. That ended in disaster. So if for Harry not to sort of fall into the same trap, I think he needs to rein back. But hopefully we're not going to get any more slagging off the royal family in his documentaries. And if he moves into other things, fair enough. But the polo one, I don't think it's gone down that well.
No, well, he did do an Invictus Games one that he was in briefly.
Yeah, the Invictus Games,
for Netflix, and that's a good cause that he does. But yeah, I'm just trying to get a comparison between the documentaries that we've seen from the Sussexes in California with these documentaries that are coming out this week. Well, I'm probably just being a bit too naughty if I'm drawing a comparison between the two.
You like being naughty, Matt, don't you? But, you like causing
I could see it on your face when you brought it up. But what will be interesting is, of course, the first Harry and Meghan Netflix series, given the content of it, and it was the first time we were getting something of exactly that style from them. That obviously had massive cut-through. I will be interested to see, and the real comparison will come, everyone's talking about William's homelessness documentary. This has made huge news, and as you say, around the world. What will be interesting now is a few projects in, and it's no longer focused on them slagging off the royal family, I assume. How many people are going to watch the polo series, but also how much cut-through will it have, even globally? How much will we be talking about it? That's when it'll be really...
Well, I think the next thing we're going to see with Netflix is when she gets over all her trademark problems and various things is American Riviera Orchard, isn't it? I think we're going to see her in the kitchen knocking up some of her favourite pasta dishes or something and pouring out some of her favourite red wine and this, that and the other, and let's see how she does with that. I think that's the next big Netflix project. Whether that will work or not, I have my doubts. But
and as I say, showing off, this wonderful lifestyle you have in California, cooking and going to polo events, compared to two hard-working royals, meeting survivors from domestic violence and meeting people who have been living on the street and actually trying to make a difference. I think the contrast is stark.
Yeah, that is the contrast. Actually, it comes across as they're trying to make money out of it, and instead of doing good deeds, but. That's where we are, isn't it, unfortunately?
Well, let's try and move on from Harry and Meghan for just a little bit. So I've just got back from Australia, your home country, beautiful place, wonderful people. Met some fans of the show, actually, quite a few people.
You've got fans down there?
Of the show, not of me, but of the show generally, and you are part of the show, you are guests, so they're fans of you as well. Sure. But people in Australia really liked the show, they were big fans of the royals. We did some shows from Australia, but on the final day when we were in Samoa, we did get a briefing from the palace as to what happens now. So they believe that they met all their objectives in Australia. Everything kind of went relatively swimmingly. And we need to talk about what next for the King and Queen, because they've talked about the trip was a tonic for the King. It lifted his spirits because he's had a terrible year with his treatment for cancer. It's been very difficult for him. And that this kind of all systems go for next year. Bearing in mind his cancer treatment is still ongoing, do you think this is a safe way to carry on with the King and Queen, to say, right, you're after Australia, it all went well, back to normal, go, let's send you to more countries abroad?
Well, I read a small diary piece the other day saying that his doctors were slightly taken aback at this briefing, that he'd actually be able to do a lot more trips. Obviously, it's down to the medical people and how they decide he is. It's the fact that this tour has gone really well, augurs well, that he's obviously well enough. He wasn't well enough to go to New Zealand. The doctors decided he shouldn't go that far. But obviously, places like Canada and Jamaica and the other 13 countries that he's head of state would obviously love a visit. So I'm sure that he will get round to them in time, but they're going to have to take it slowly. They're going to have to pace themselves. I would have thought a trip to the States would be a great thing as well. I mean, whoever gets in. I mean, Trump seems to be very fond of the King. And obviously he'd like to have, that would be enormous if he went to America, if they both went to America. But they've got to pace themselves. It's all dependent on how well he is. But I think obviously the Commonwealth countries and the countries of which he's head of state, they should probably take priority. So I would have thought the next one is Canada, a place that was extremely close to the heart of his parents. I mean, I think Prince Philip went to Canada 75 times during his life, believe it or not. So I'm sure that'll be next. He loves Canada as well, so I'm sure that'll probably be the spring or autumn tour next year.
And also, it's not surprising that they have so quickly leaned into letting people know the royals are keen to get out and about, because there were so many reports this year about how difficult the King was finding it, that he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. He waited so long to be the King. we don't know how long his reign will be as well. That's the reality of someone in that, he's in his 70s, and also because he has been battling cancer. And I can imagine they are so buoyed by this trip that they've been on, because now he can
giving him a lift, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it can lean more into what his mother so famously said, which is they need to be seen to be believed. And he wants to get out there. He has had his wings clipped a lot this year for health reasons. And I'm certain that next year, I think we're going to see a big year for the King with doctors' permission, because he would want to. He would just want to get out there.
How was it, just very briefly, just on Australia, because I was there, I kind of, in my own little bubble when you were obviously...
Tell us, you were there, we weren't.
You were there watching the coverage back from the UK, and you are Australian. Just very briefly, was I wrong in thinking that it was a success? Because I've been reporting that, the Australians embraced them and it all went well. What's your view?
It was going to be a big test for King Charles, and I really had no idea how it would go. There was a lot of conversation about the Republic since he became the King, and him going to Australia himself was going to be the big test. Are there going to be wide-scale protests? Are people going to greet him warmly? How many people will turn up at the Opera House to see him for that, iconic last day?
They had to lock people out. They couldn't fit everyone in.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think the test was... I think a lot of Australians were actually very surprised at how warmly he was received, and that's the result, isn't it? That's the answer.
From a distance, it looked to me as if it went as well as could be expected.
Yeah.
Obviously we had the one protest by Lydia Thorpe, but the parliamentarian who's got a bit of a history for protests. But that's fairly par for the course for her. I think they were probably expecting it. Probably would be surprised if she hadn't done something.
Yeah, I think.
And I think Graham Smith, the Republic guy, was leaping around in the background in his yellow T-shirt or something, saying "Not my king," but he does that over here as well.
I barely saw him.
Nobody saw. But generally speaking, I think it went as well as it possibly could have done. Obviously, we've got this thing hanging over the Commonwealth about reparations, and that's very much something that the government's got to deal with, and the King's got to sort of remain above, I think, because he's not one who's going to be forking out the money. But no, I thought it went as well as it possibly could have done.
I agree with that.
Well, let's talk about reparations briefly then, because obviously the trip down under finished in Samoa. This was the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting where the King was there with 56 or 55, 50, including Starmer, so 56 other world leaders. And it's going to be in Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean next year. And the new Secretary-General is Ghanaian. She's replaced Baroness Scotland. And they had a ruling where they said now is the time to talk about reparations. And I believe over the next couple of years leading up to the next CHOGM, this is something that's going to grow and grow and grow and bring the King and the United Kingdom into. And if we're talking about more foreign tours, are there some pitfalls? Are there some places they shouldn't go? What is the danger now that the CHOGM or the Commonwealth countries are going to really start trying to push home this idea that Britain, the King, the government should be paying reparations to countries about slavery? That's what we're talking about, the slave trade.
I think a lot of these countries, sadly, use this as a deflection away from their own domestic problems. I was very, very disappointed with Barbados, a country I've been to many, many times, actually, and they always used to trade on their Britishness, actually, when they wanted to attract tourists. And now, of course, they're sending out a different message. And I thought it was very sad the way they ditched the Queen shortly before her death. I think they could have waited. And, of course, they didn't have a referendum. Who knows what the result would have been had they had a referendum. So I think that was done by a government that was sort of flexing its muscles and deflecting from domestic issues. And I think some of the other countries will be doing this as well. I don't think we should pay reparations. Hopefully Keir Starmer will stand firm. One of the few things I agree with him with when he said he's not going to pay reparations. And it is a government thing. And the idea that we can afford to pay out £18 trillion or something. I don't know where they get these figures from, but is absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's actually quite divisive. And I'm not sure that a lot of the people living in these countries actually agree with their governments for making this such a big issue. I'm sure some of them do, but I'm sure some of them don't. But it's not going to go away. I think you're quite right. I think they're going to carry on with this. But I don't think ultimately we're going to be paying anything, and I think that's the right decision. I think as the King said in his speech, we need to look forward, and we need to sort of build a better future, and not keep going on about things that happened 200 years ago.
And you touched on it then as well. Sorry, I was just going to say, with the fact that the royal family are effectively diplomats, they have to sort of go with the script of what the current UK government is also saying. And as you said, the British Prime Minister at the moment has been clear on their intention with that. So he also has to toe the line and stick with that. So there's a lot of responsibility gets put on him. Sort of the optics of it are, why isn't he addressing this or saying this? But the reality is that he has to be in line with what government policy is. And he has, I think the closest he's come to sort of putting some of his own potentially personal feelings into it is, I think, in Kenya last year when he's discussed his greatest sorrow and regret, I think was the phrase, which comes very close to apology-ish adjacent words, but I think that's about as far as it can go.
I think if it was up to him, I think he might pay reparations.
This is the thing.
You know, and I think he might sort of delve into some of the sort of, you know, coffers of, or something in the Royal Collection Trust and sell a couple of paintings or something. I don't know. I think he left to his own devices, he probably would, but I don't think he can make those decisions. That's got to be a government decision. And as you say, Bronte, he's got to toe the line when it comes to the finances.